All right. Thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. And I'm also, of course, the host of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. You can find the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast on Apple, Spotify, as an audio podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Bonnie, it's also available on YouTube. A lot more people are watching on YouTube, and it's great. We've posted about 20 shows. We just launched the show in the summer of 2023, and we're already well over 10,000 interactions with the audio show and with the video show. If you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please feel free to give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. We would love to know that as well. And appreciate you all. Again, the book, Love, Hope, Lyme. Bonnie, I've made the e-version of the book free for chronic Lyme survivors from day one. I've given out over 1,000 PDF copies of the book. If you're a chronic Lyme survivor, reach out to me via Facebook or LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, freddiamond.com, and I will be more than happy to send you the e-version, the PDF of the book. It's also, of course, available on Amazon. And if you want a signed copy, just reach out to me as well. And we handle that via Venmo and other sources. All right. So on February 20th and February 21st, the Center for Lyme Action will be holding its annual virtual fly-in to connect advocates with their members of Congress. And I'm very excited. I have Bonnie Crater on the show today. And we're going to be talking about that. Today's show is being posted on February 5th. So Bonnie will talk about this, but there's time to register, but you got to do it quick because registration to be part of the fly-in will end on February 10th. So hopefully you're listening to this before then and can participate if you'd like. If not, hopefully you'll enjoy the show. And Bonnie, we're doing the show also today as a piece. I mean, the purpose of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast is twofold. It's to educate family members and friends who have a chronic Lyme survivor in their life about what their loved one is going through. And there's so many angles to it. There's the physical angle, there's a lot of mental angles, there's dietary angles, there's financial angles. It's really quite insane. And we also advocate for Lyme survivors to help them ask for advice and have to ask for the support they need. And a big part of that is they want to get involved, right? They want to get involved to understand. I hear this all the time. Why doesn't government care? Or why isn't the government doing more things? And that's really the purpose of the Center for Lyme Action. So I'm really excited to have you here today. We're going to talk about what's going to be going on with the fly-in, the virtual fly-in, but give us a little bit of an introduction. Give us an introduction to the Center for Lyme Action. If you want, give us a little bit of your background, how you got to this point, and what is the purpose?
Okay, well, first of all, Fred, thanks so much for letting me or inviting me to be on this program. I really appreciate you inviting me to do this. So the Center for Lyme Action was started in 2019, and the reason that we wanted to do this was we wanted to grow federal funding for Lyme and tick-borne disease. And one of the things that we observed is that the funding for Lyme disease in particular was not growing at all. In fact, the numbers were actually declining in real dollars between, say, 2001 and that 2019 period. And so we felt that that the power of the federal government was very essential. And if you look at diseases like cancer, where enormous progress has been made over the last 20, 30 years, like enormous, and every day something new is invented for those. There's billions and billions of dollars. In fact, it's around over $50 billion is spent every year by the federal government on research for cancer. And that money is playing out in terms of lots of progress. So if you looked at the funding for Lyme and tick-borne disease, it's pitifully small. And so we felt that in order for us to make progress as a community of not just Lyme advocates, but doctors, researchers, people that could help us solve our problem, they need that money. And there's no way that they can run a lab, do this important research without that kind of funding. So our aim with Center for Lyme Action is is to grow federal funding, but it's to grow it to a significant level where it's hundreds of millions. Our goal that we published in our Lyme Moonshot is 500 million to $1 billion a year. Right now we're at around 155 million, but it's up. It's up quite a bit. Actually, it's 178. So we're almost 3 times the funding from when we started, and that plays out in the number of projects that can be funded, the attention that the government pays to this particular disease problem that we're all sort of frustrated by, because we still don't have a terrific diagnostic and therapies for people with the chronic condition that really work really reliably. We really need this research. It's a long game, though, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that happens today, tomorrow, which is really challenging for all of us. We want a cure right now. We want a great diagnostic, and we want a cure right now. But step by step, we're making a lot of progress over the years.
So a couple questions to get us on board, and we'll talk about the Flyin in a second. Why is this the status of what it is? So why is it where cancer is being, and no disrespect to anybody with cancer, we don't want people to have cancer. Why is that? Why has that raised $50 billion? And Lyme is at like 178 million, as you said. Well, give us a little bit of your insights into why that is.
The lobbying for cancer started in the 1930s. Okay. We started in 2019. So we're just at the beginning of our journey here. But this journey is so important for us to get the money that we need to get the research. So again, it's a long game, but we want to play this game because we're already seeing benefits of projects that are being funded that are critical in order to get good diagnostics and therapies.
So give people an understanding of where that money goes to. So you said 178 million has been allocated. How does that give us a little bit of an insight into the process and who's spending that 178 million and what is being used to spend? And of course, we want to keep getting to 500 million, but how does it happen and what is being used for?
Right. So I want to we'll talk about, there's basically 3 areas right now in the federal government, and a 4th. Let's say there's 4 areas of the federal government that are paying attention to Lyme and tick-borne disease and have programs and funding for research. So the biggest, of course, area is the NIH. So the NIH has a division, the NIAID, which is also the division that would pay attention to things like COVID. So it's allergy and infectious diseases group, and so they have been funding Lyme disease at around $26 million when we started, and now they're well over 100 million, so 114 million, which is great. After some of this work that we've been doing, so we're seeing some really good success. And what happens? Okay, so I'm going to stick to your question, but I want to go back to that. So the NIH is one body, and that's a very important body. That's the largest funder of research in the world. Okay, so we need to get some of that money into Lyme and tick-borne disease. Second is the CDC, and the CDC plays an important role for creating awareness around the United States and the world for various diseases, and they track diseases, and the actual counting of the cases and keeping track of who has it, who doesn't have it, which is challenging because we don't have a good diagnostic, but they're doing the best they can, is a very important function. They also fund internal projects. They call them intramural projects. It's the government term for the fund for diagnostics, right? Because there are areas they're trying to count cases, but they can't count the cases because they don't have a good diagnostic. So they're also funding projects for diagnostics. And then a big portion of the work that they do is also in prevention. So prevention includes funding projects which would create repellents, a new tick repellent, for example, that might help us help people all over the United States to not get bit by ticks in the first place. So, so they play an important part. So the NIH, the CDC, then DoD has a very big interest in Lyme and tick-borne disease. And the reason is that they have the service folks are out there, crawling in the grass and the bushes as part of their training. And some of them are getting these illnesses, which are very puzzling and also very devastating for the training of our armed services. So you might take a fighter pilot like Nicole Malachowski, Colonel Nicole Malachowski, retired because she contracted a tick-borne illness in her work. And when we train fighter pilots to defend our country, we'll put $1 million into this training. And so just from it's terrible that Nicole went through this terrible thing, but it's also, it doesn't make economic sense for the government to spend money on that training when they have to medically retire people who are getting ill from the training that they're doing. So
just
anyway,
a quick note, Nicole was a past guest on the
great.
Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. And I'm glad you brought up her name. It's just an unbelievable story. And it hits to exactly the point that you just said, one of our best and brightest was taken down by a tick. It's insane.
Yeah. One of our best and brightest. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So NIH, CDC, DoD, and there's also a group inside the Central Health and Human Services body. And the group is called Lyme Innovation. And they have a program called Lyme X, which is running a very important diagnostic competition, which is inspiring dozens of researchers and groups to win a prize for building a diagnostic that will work reliably for acute Lyme. So those are the 4 areas in which the funding actually goes to. And the way the government works is, if the funding isn't increasing, they can't do anything new. The government has a really hard time, if the budget is flat, to take a project and kill it and replace it with a new project. But if you are working and you're able to get additional funding, it makes it a whole lot easier for them to do new things. And we want them to do new things. We want them to do new and important things.
Yeah. Give us the status of, I know you've been around since 2019 and we've grown to 178 million. What is right now in this moment is the interest, is the attention? And by the way, for the Lyme Action, actually, I'm in Northern Virginia, and I'm happy to say that George Mason University, which is 3 miles away from my house, was one of the finalists. So that was very exciting to see that. What is the status of knowledge of Lyme as a challenge within the government? Is it like everybody knows? I mean, you're going to have the Flyin, which we'll talk about in a second. Is it like everybody knows and they're trying to find money, or 2 out of every 100 Congress people are familiar with it because maybe where they're based? Give us an understanding of, I mean, obviously over the last couple of years, the knowledge of COVID had significantly increased for obvious reasons. Where are we with Lyme?
So I would say that we are at the beginning of our journey, but we've made a lot of progress. People, when we're doing these meetings for now, we're on our 4th or 5th year. We've been doing these meetings, and oftentimes we're meeting with the same staff over and over again, so they know our story. They talk to their member and inform them of the story. We have they're actively, many of them are actively pursuing additional appropriations, additional funding for Lyme and tick-borne disease. So it's become something that's not unknown, but it's a journey. So we're not there yet, and we certainly haven't gotten the funding that we need. But we're making a lot of progress.
All right, so we're going to talk here about the fly-in, and I want to talk about, just give us the overview of what the fly-in is. It's February 20th and February 21st, the virtual fly-in. Tell us a little bit about it. What's it look like? How do you participate? And then we'll talk about the messages that we want to get across. I know you're also going to be doing a training on February 15th, but even if you can't attend the fly-in and you're just not able, or you're listening to this sometime in the future, I want to get some of your perspective. Again, we're talking with Bonnie Crater from the Center for Lyme Action. I want to get some insights. I want to get some insights into what should people be saying. Can the average Lyme survivor in central Pennsylvania, should they be doing something in the future? Again, people are going to start learning about this show as we continue. And the great thing about podcasts is this will be around forever. So talk about the fly-in. What does it look like? What do you do? What do you expect? And then give us some insights, Bonnie, if you don't mind, on what people can do if they're not able to participate in the fly-in.
Okay, great. So the fly-in is the mechanism that we use to kick off the appropriations process. And we do this with constituents. Last year, we had representatives from 46 states across the United States. And we had hundreds of meetings between Lyme advocates and their members of Congress, with the purpose of growing the federal funding for these various programs. And so we provide training, what to say, what the asks are, the requests that we want them to make. And then we also do a very important step with that after the fly-in, which is to submit the actual appropriations requests. These are the forms. So lots of folks do fly-ins, but they don't do this form step, which is really important. It's a very important step. You fill out appropriations forms. You send them to your member of Congress. We have some advocates do that. We have a terrific advocate who's now working closely with us as our intern, Megan Bradshaw. And so Megan's going to be leading a team of folks that are going to be filling out forms and getting that process. So this constituent form filling out process is the first step. The member of Congress can't take any, basically typically does not take any steps unless they have input from their constituents. We're giving them that input. We're giving it to them in a meeting with their staff. We're giving it to the meeting in the forms. And then then those forms will go to the appropriations committees. And in the appropriations committees, they discuss the staff, committee staff, and the members of those committees. They discuss the various funding projects that they want to fund, and then they create the appropriations bills. And there's several bills that we're very interested in. We're interested in the DoD bill, right? So because that's where the CDMRP program is, that's where their research program is in DoD. We're interested in the labor HHS bill. So that's a labor health and human services bill, because that's where the NIH and the CDC are funded. So those are two appropriations bills that we pay a lot of attention to. And the bills are, these extremely long documents. We have a lot of things that we fund in the federal government. Lyme is a small piece. We want to make it bigger, but so the bills are produced. They're voted on by committee, and then they're brought to the floor. And there's a regular order of how this appropriations process works. We're now, if you are reading the papers at all, we're now discussing the FY24 appropriations, right? Which the government fiscal year ends at the end of September, right? And so, but the actual voting on of the bills is not going to happen for a couple of weeks now. And so we hope that will happen, and we'll get our FY24 funding approved. But the fly-in is, just going back to the fly-in. The fly-in is the first step in this process, and the first step to make our members of Congress, whether it's in the House or the Senate, aware of the needs to grow federal funding for this particular disease.
So just kind of curious, what is the status of that? So, is it contentious? Are there some members of Congress who are absolutely against any funding for Lyme research, or is it more where either they just don't know because there's other things that have been a higher priority. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things going on with government, obviously, and we're not ignorant about that. But where is it from that perspective, or is just give us a perspective on where uh, I can't imagine anyone's like against it. Maybe they have other priorities, right? So give us a little bit of an insight into that.
Yeah, we've never heard anyone say, no, we need to decrease the funding for Lyme and tick-borne disease. No one's
Yeah,
ever said that to us.
no.
So it's really a matter of awareness and, having a, well-organized conversation with your member of Congress to explain to them why, the suffering that's happening, the fact that we don't have a good diagnostic or a therapy for people with the chronic condition, and um, just making them aware of that. And then, yeah, we need more research dollars because the funding is, is still, even though we've made a lot of progress, it's still really low versus other comparable diseases.
Are there any Congress people in Congress, senators or representatives who are really on the leading edge of it? For example, he's no
Yeah.
longer in Congress, but there was Frank Wolf, who is in my county. It was my congressman who was a great advocate for
Mhm.
making awareness of Lyme. Could you point out some who are specifically helpful in the cause right
Yeah.
now?
One of our best friends is Susan Collins from Maine.
Yeah. Oh,
Maine is one of the most endemic states in the country. I mean, I think the most endemic state in the country. Um, and uh, uh, she we got kind of lucky. So when we first started the organization in 2019, we held an event in October of 2019. And Fred, did you attend that one?
no.
Okay, so you attended later. Okay, because
Yes.
that's right. Okay, so so we held an event. It was a small event. There were, I don't know, 60 of us or 100 of us or something. And we had members of Congress make some speeches um, and so on. And in the audience, it turned out one of Senator Collins's staff was there, and Senator Collins was very interested in putting together a bill that would help generate more activity in the government. And that bill, they called it the Tick Act.
Mhm.
So the day after, actually, I guess it was the day after we had that event, we got a call from Senator Collins's office, and they asked us to come see them. So we're like, okay, I guess we're in business. Somebody wants us to do something. So we went over to Senator Collins's office, and we learned from their staff that Senator Collins had introduced a bill called the Tick Act, and they needed what's called co-sponsors. So this is another. So if you can't participate in the fly-in, these sorts of opportunities also are available. So, all right. So the way the Senate works is, if you're a senator, you introduce a bill. You try to introduce the bill as bipartisan, typically, because it's very close in terms of the voting inside the Senate from a Democrat versus Republican standpoint. So if you introduce a bipartisan bill that both D's and R's like, then you have a better chance of getting it approved. So Senator Collins is a Republican, and she introduced the bill with Tina Smith and Senator Angus King, also from Maine.
Right.
And but they didn't have enough co-sponsors. So the idea is, what happens is that the senators all look at the bills that are kicking around, and they'll sign on as a co-sponsor, saying, yeah, I really like this bill. I'm probably going to vote for it if it comes to the floor. And so the spot process of getting co-sponsors it requires work, and those senators want to hear from their constituents that, yeah, they should be a co-sponsor of that bill. So we went to work with our small group and small but mighty group, and we were able to increase the number of co-sponsors from a few, right, literally, I don't know, 5 or 6, to 33.
Hmm.
And what that means is that 33 senators think this bill is a good idea. And that's a lot, right?
Yes.
It's a third of the whole Senate.
Yep.
And so because we had Lyme advocates from all over the country making phone calls and sending emails, there was a lot of activity around this. And so we were able to get a lot of co-sponsorship. So in the end, that bill passed as part of, it got tucked into the appropriations bill for that year. And the bill passed in incredible record time. We started working on it, in October, and it was actually became law by the end of the year.
Mm.
That never happens. Never happens. Bills take years.
Yep.
It doesn't take, so it typically takes years for a bill to pass.
Yeah.
But this thing there, we were able to create a lot of momentum, and that was because of the fantastic work of the advocates.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was amazing.
It's a great story. And actually, I mean, Maine, the ticks are horrible. I mean, there's articles every day about moose that are dying from ticks, and I can understand why they would definitely advocate for that. Listen, I want to send people to the website. So go to, what is it, Center for Lyme? I think just Google or go to Bing and type in Center for Lyme Action. The virtual fly-in is February 20th and the 21st. There's a training on February 15th. For people listening to this in the future, Bonnie, people who just want to advocate, again, is one thing that I've seen happen is when people get Lyme disease, then they begin the journey to understand what it's all about, right? And we all know stories of people who have chronic Lyme who've been through 10, 15 doctors over some cases decades to really get discovered that they have Lyme disease. And it's just I'm so happy for the work that you're doing, because I've seen so many people who struggle, as have you, of course, and anyone who's listening to this. But a lot of people are now becoming aware of A, that they have Lyme, or B, they've just got diagnosed with Lyme disease. So, they're learning things like this that doesn't get covered by insurance. And I know we talked about the CDC before. The CDC just did some positive things in recognizing, the bacteria as a cause of chronic illness, but there's still more that can happen, with the CDC, of course. And 178 million, we want to get to 500 million, like you said. And as more and more people get this disease, it truly is an epidemic, and not just in the United States. I mean, around the world. I mean, it's horrible in Australia. I've had people in the UK and England who've reached out to me, who are struggling, trying to find solutions. All the stuff that's going on. What can people do? Again, people are going to be listening to this well into the future. Give us one or two things that people can do to, quote unquote, be an advocate to help get more attention paid to Lyme disease through government.
Yeah. So the first thing I would encourage folks to do is to go to our website, go to the homepage, scroll to the bottom. There'll be a pop-up, and you can sign up to be on our be a newsletter on our to receive our newsletter. We from time to time, and it's this advocacy thing. It's very patchy, right? There'll be a lot to do in a short period of time, and then nothing for. But you'll be notified by signing up for our mailing list and to be on our mailing list, and we will notify you of various opportunities to click on an email, write a personal story for various pieces of legislation that we're trying to work on.
Yeah, very powerful stuff. Once again, the virtual fly-in, it's February 20th, 21st. Go to the website for Center for Lyme Action. And Bonnie, I just want to acknowledge you. You told me your story about, the finding of the Center for Lyme Action and what led you there, and the work that you're doing. Again, I've met you up on Capitol Hill at the briefing that you had over the past summer. And it's just, I didn't know that any of this stuff existed, 2 years ago before I started the research for my book, Love, Hope, Lyme. And there's so many people who struggle, who are suffering. Anything that we can do and the work that you're doing to make Capitol Hill more aware of this and the education. And I live in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. I work with a lot of companies that sell technology and products to the government. And yes, the process of government doing things can be quite arduous at times. But the reality is, most people in government who work for government, they want to do the right things. They want to hear these stories. They want to serve the constituency. It's the bureaucracy that sometimes gets in the way, and certain types of hindrances to legislation and to things passing. But for the most part, government really does want its citizens to be healthy. It wants them to have high qualities of life. They want food to be safe. They want the roads to be safe. They want the country to be defended, et cetera. So, I'm glad that you're getting that message out there to get more and more of them to do the right thing. So kudos to you and the Center for Lyme Actions. Is there anything else you want to say? Anything else we missed?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the advocates out there.
Hmm.
So me and my brother Jeff and Megan, we can't do this by ourselves. We actually need you, and we need your help. We need you to click on things and attend the fly-in and do this work with us. It's actually pretty fun to meet the staff and kind of just get an understanding of how the government works, and a lot of people really enjoy it. If and you don't need too much. You have your story that you know your story, and if you're willing to share it, and if this is your jam, we'd love to have you participate.
Just as I want to just follow up on that comment. So many people do nothing, right? I mean, no disrespect to people in the world, but it's so easy to not do anything. Do something. If you're listening to the show, there are so many ways to become an advocate, to help get the message of what Lyme survivors are going through out there, through organizations like Center for Lyme Action. So if you're listening to the show, just do something. All right. Once again, I want to thank Bonnie Crater. My name is Fred Diamond, and this is the Love Hope Lyme podcast.